I've always believed that routine keeps a marriage strong. 25 years with Laura taught me that much. Our life together had a comfortable rhythm: morning coffee, work, dinner conversations about nothing in particular, and weekends spent between home improvement projects and visiting our grown kids. Not exactly exciting, but it worked for us. At least I thought it did. "I'm thinking about getting back in shape," Laura announced one evening, scrolling through her phone while we watched TV. "I downloaded this fitness app. It tracks your runs, monitors your heart rate, all that stuff." "That's great," I said, genuinely happy for her. At 56, I'd long ago surrendered to my expanding waistline, but Laura at 50 still had that spark, that desire to improve. It was one of the things I'd always admired about her. The changes came gradually: new running shoes, workout clothes, early morning alarms. "Don't wait up for dinner" became a regular part of our conversations as her evening runs got longer. An hour, then an hour and a half, sometimes two. "You're really committed to this," I said one night after she returned, her hair barely damp despite what should have been a sweaty workout. "Once you start seeing results, it's addictive," she replied, not quite meeting my eyes. Maybe I should have noticed sooner. The way she'd silence her phone whenever I entered the room, how she'd step outside to take certain calls, the password she suddenly added to her laptop. But when you've been married so long, you stop looking for clues. You stop questioning. Trust becomes a habit as ingrained as any other. That might have been the end of it, just another chapter in our comfortable, unremarkable life, if not for that one careless moment. Her phone left unlocked on the kitchen counter while she showered. I wasn't snooping, not really. I just wanted to check the weather for the weekend when I noticed the fitness app icon on her home screen. One tap. That's all it took to unravel 25 years of trust. The familiar map of our neighborhood appeared, but the running route wasn't familiar at all. It stretched across town to an area I barely recognized, with a 40-minute stop at what appeared to be an apartment complex, just like the route from 3 days ago, and the week before that. The shower water stopped running upstairs. In that moment, before I could process what I was seeing, I knew our comfortable routine was about to change forever. I placed her phone back on the counter exactly as I'd found it, my hands trembling slightly. For a moment, I convinced myself there was a reasonable explanation. Maybe she was taking a specialized class at a gym across town. Perhaps she was visiting a friend I didn't know about. The human mind is remarkable at creating comforting narratives when faced with uncomfortable truths. "Dinner's still warm if you want some," I said when Laura came downstairs, hair wrapped in a towel. I kept my voice steady, casual. "I grabbed a protein shake after my run," she replied, not looking up from her phone, now safely back in her possession. "Trying to stick to the nutrition plan." The nutrition plan. Another new development in her fitness journey, though I'd yet to see any evidence of it beyond a few token salads when I was watching. What else had I missed? That night, sleep evaded me. Laura's soft breathing beside me felt like a taunt. I slipped out of bed around 2 a.m. and fired up my laptop. A quick search brought up the fitness app's website, boasting about its accurate GPS tracking and detailed statistics. "Never lose track of your progress," the cheerful homepage promised. The irony wasn't lost on me. I typed in the cross streets where her run had paused for those 40 mysterious minutes. Google Maps showed a luxury apartment complex called The Residences at West Lake. Recently built. Doorman, private parking. Definitely not a gym or park. The weight in my chest hardened into something cold and dense. 25 years, 2 kids, countless memories. Was I really ready to question all of it based on a digital breadcrumb trail? But even as I asked myself the question, I was already planning my next move. Because sometimes, even when you don't want the truth, you need it. "Working late tonight," I told Laura over coffee the next morning. "Quarterly reports. Probably won't be home until 8 or 9. She barely looked up from her phone. "That's fine. I've got a longer route planned for today anyway." I nodded, tasting something bitter that wasn't from my coffee. How many lies had we exchanged like this? How long had the foundation of our marriage been cracking beneath our feet while we pretended everything was solid? I didn't go to work. Called in sick for the first time in 3 years. Instead, I parked my car 2 blocks from our house and waited. At 5:30, right on schedule, Laura emerged wearing her regular clothes, jeans and a light sweater, no sign of workout gear. She got into her car and drove away. I followed at a safe distance, keeping 2 or 3 vehicles between us. My heart pounded against my ribs as we crossed town. This wasn't me. I wasn't the kind of man who followed his wife, who suspected, who investigated. Yet here I was, turning into a stranger along with my marriage. Laura parked near the residences at Westlake, checked her appearance in the rearview mirror, and walked confidently toward the entrance. No hesitation, no searching for the right building. She'd been here before, many times according to her running app. I found a spot with a clear view of the entrance and settled in to wait. My phone buzzed. A work email needed attention. I ignored it. The sun began its slow descent, painting the luxury apartments in golden light that felt obscenely beautiful given the circumstances. In my pocket, I clutched my phone, opened to her fitness app, which showed she was currently on mile 3 of her evening run. 42 minutes later, she emerged. Even from this distance, I could see her smile as she checked her phone before getting into her car. I beat Laura home by 10 minutes, enough time to microwave yesterday's leftovers and set them on the table like I'd just arrived myself. Enough time to compose my face into something that didn't reveal the devastation churning inside me. Enough time to decide what I would say. When she walked through the door, cheeks flushed, I had her phone in my hand. "How was your run?" I asked, my voice surprisingly level. "Good." She dropped her keys in the bowl by the door. 8 miles today. I'm really improving my pace." 8 miles. According to her app, that's exactly what she'd logged. Perfect alibi wrapped in digital proof. "That's impressive," I said, turning her phone screen toward her. The fitness app displayed her route, the neat line that curved around the residences at Westlake with that telling 40-minute pause. "Especially since you spent most of that time in an apartment building across town." Her expression shifted so quickly I almost missed the transitions: surprise, fear, calculation, and finally a carefully constructed indignation. "You went through my phone? You followed me?" Classic deflection. I'd expected it, but it still stung. "Don't do that, Laura. Don't make this about my breach of trust when you've been lying to me for months." "It's not what you think," she started, but there was no conviction behind the words, a script followed by countless unfaithful spouses throughout history. "Who is he?" My voice cracked slightly, the first sign of the emotion I was desperately trying to contain. The silence stretched between us, 25 years of shared history suddenly reduced to this awful, defining moment. Outside, a neighbor's sprinkler system kicked on. The clock on the microwave flipped to 8 p.m., life continuing its mundane rhythms while mine imploded. "His name is David," she finally said. "He's 48, a real estate developer. I met him at the gym 3 months ago." 3 months. While I was working overtime to afford our upcoming anniversary trip to Cancun, while I was fixing the leak in our upstairs bathroom, while I was planning our retirement, Laura was building a separate life with a man named David. "Is it serious?" I asked, hating the pathetic tremor in my voice. Laura's eyes darted around the room, looking everywhere but at me. "Tom, please, is it serious?" Each word felt like glass in my throat. "I don't know what I want right now," she finally said. "I'm confused." I laughed, a harsh sound that surprised us both. "Confused? That's what teenagers get, Laura, not 50-year-old women with a husband of 25 years. The next hour passed in a blur of accusations, tears, and half-formed explanations. He made her feel alive. I had grown distant. It wasn't planned. She was going to tell me. The same excuses that unfaithful partners have been recycling since the beginning of time. That night, I slept in the guest room. Or rather, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of our marriage, searching for the warning signs I must have missed. The next morning, I called in sick again. Laura left for work without speaking to me. As soon as her car disappeared down the street, I went to our bedroom and opened her laptop. Her password used to be our anniversary. Now it was refused. After 3 failed attempts, I gave up and turned to her bedside drawer instead. Hotel receipts. A separate credit card statement I'd never seen before. A small bottle of perfume I didn't recognize. The evidence of her double life, hidden in plain sight. I found myself driving to the residences at Westlake without consciously deciding to go there. The building was even more impressive in daylight, all gleaming glass and modern architecture. Money. That's what this place screamed. David, the real estate developer, obviously had plenty of it. What else did he have that I didn't? The doorman eyed me suspiciously as I approached. "Can I help you, sir?" "I'm looking for David," I said, realizing too late that I didn't know his last name. "David who?" "The real estate developer," I replied lamely. "There are several residents in that field," he said, professional but firm. "I'll need a full name and unit number." I mumbled something about getting the information wrong and retreated to my car, humiliation burning in my chest. This wasn't me. I wasn't the type to confront strangers or make scenes, but I also wasn't the type to be cheated on, and yet here we were. Back at home, I opened my laptop and typed David Real Estate Developer Westlake into the search bar. Sometimes the simplest approaches worked best. The third result gave me what I needed. David Harmon, principal at Harmon Development Group, specializing in luxury properties. His company website featured a professional headshot of a tanned, fit-looking man with salt and pepper hair and the confident smile of someone who took what he wanted from life. Now I had a name and a face to go with my pain. The next week passed in a fog of forced normalcy. Laura and I orbited each other in our home like distant planets, exchanging only the necessary information to maintain the facade that our life together hadn't completely shattered. She stopped using the fitness app. No more runs. Instead, she'd simply say she was going out and leave for hours at a time. The honesty, if you could call it that, felt like just another insult. Meanwhile, I found myself going down a dark digital rabbit hole. David Harmon's online presence was substantial. LinkedIn showed an impressive career trajectory. Instagram revealed a lifestyle of expensive restaurants, exclusive golf clubs, and charity galas. Facebook contained photos of him on a yacht at a private vineyard in Napa, courtside at basketball games. No sign of a wife or girlfriend in any of them. No sign of Laura either. At least she'd been discreet enough for that. "We need to talk about what happens next," I finally said one evening, as Laura prepared to leave for another unspecified outing. She paused, hand on the doorknob. "What do you mean? Are you leaving me for him? Are we getting divorced? Are you just going to keep seeing him behind my back indefinitely? I need to know the plan here, Laura." Her shoulders sagged. "I don't know, Tom. I honestly don't know." "That's not good enough anymore," I said, surprised by the steel in my voice. "You don't get to destroy our marriage and then claim confusion. Make a decision." "I need more time," she whispered. "Take all the time you need," I replied, "but not in this house, not while you're still seeing him." The ultimatum hung between us, unexpected from a man who had spent his life avoiding confrontation. Laura's eyes widened. She hadn't thought I had it in me. Truth be told, neither had I. That night she packed a small suitcase. "I'll stay with my sister for a few days," she said, "until I figure things out." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. After she left, I poured myself a bourbon, the expensive bottle we'd been saving for a special occasion, and opened my laptop again. This time, I wasn't interested in David Harmon's social media presence. Instead, I looked up Harmon Development Group's current projects. The company website boasted about a new luxury condominium breaking ground next month. Their flagship development. Press releases mentioned challenges with zoning approvals that had finally been overcome. City Council minutes revealed a narrow vote in favor of the project, with the deciding vote coming from Councilman Wilson. A plan began forming in my mind, not for reconciliation, not even for confrontation, something else entirely. I opened another browser tab and searched for Mark Wilson City Council corruption allegations. Sometimes revenge didn't need to be personal to be effective. Councilman Wilson had faced ethics investigations twice in the past 5 years. Both times, the allegations mysteriously disappeared before formal charges could be filed. The local newspaper had run a series of articles questioning his sudden financial improvement despite his modest government salary. Nothing conclusive, but where there's smoke. I created a new email account under a fake name and composed a message to the city's Ethics Commission, copying several local reporters. Have information regarding improper relationship between Councilman Wilson and Harmon Development Group. Financial records available upon request. Concerned citizen. I didn't hit send, not yet. First, I needed actual evidence, not just suspicion and bitterness. And I needed to be certain this was what I really wanted to do. Laura called the next day. I'm coming by to pick up some more clothes. Will you be home? No, I lied. I have meetings all afternoon. After hanging up, I drove to City Hall and requested public records related to the Westlake zoning approval. The clerk seemed surprised by my interest, but provided the files without question. I spent hours poring through meeting minutes, financial disclosures, and voting records. Most of it was mind-numbingly boring, but certain patterns emerged. Wilson had initially opposed the development, citing environmental concerns. Then, after a 6-week gap in the records, he became its most vocal supporter. During those same 6 weeks, his daughter had somehow secured a scholarship to an exclusive private university. I needed more. Something definitive that connected Harmon to Wilson beyond circumstantial timing. That evening, Laura texted, "We should talk. Can I come home tomorrow?" I stared at my phone for a long time before responding, "Not yet." The next day, I called in sick again. My boss was understanding, but concerned. "Everything okay, Tom?" "This isn't like you." "Just going through some personal stuff," I said. "I'll be back on track soon." Instead of working, I sat outside Councilman Wilson's office, waiting for his public meeting hours to begin. When my turn came, I introduced myself as a concerned citizen interested in the development project. "The Harmon Group has an excellent reputation," Wilson assured me, his politician's smile never wavering. "Their projects increase property values across the neighborhood." "I heard David Harmon himself is quite persuasive," I said carefully. Something flickered across Wilson's face, just for a moment, but unmistakable. Fear. "I wouldn't know about that," he said, suddenly interested in the papers on his desk. "My dealings were with their legal team." I nodded, thanked him for his time, and left. Outside in the parking lot, I noticed Wilson making a phone call, his expression urgent. My hands trembled as I started my car. I'd struck a nerve. There was something there. That night, Laura called instead of texting. "Tom, please, it's been almost 2 weeks. We can't just leave things like this." "Actually, we can," I replied, surprising myself with how calm I sounded. "I'm busy right now, working on something important." "More important than our marriage?" she asked, her voice breaking. I thought about the documents spread across our dining room table, the connections I was mapping between Harmon and Wilson. "Yes," I said, "much more important." The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. 3 days after my meeting with Wilson, I received an anonymous email. Heard you're asking questions about Wilson and Harmon. Not the first one. Coffee at Meridian Cafe, 2 p.m. tomorrow. I arrived 30 minutes early, choosing a corner table with a view of the door. At precisely 2 o'clock, a woman in her 40s with short blonde hair and tired eyes walked in, scanned the room, and headed straight for me. "You must be the husband," she said, sitting down without waiting for an invitation. I stiffened. "Excuse me?" "Relax, I'm not a friend of your wife's. I'm Jessica Harmon, David's ex-wife." She pulled out a manila folder from her bag. "I've been following his activities since our divorce. Old habits." My mind raced to catch up. "How did you know about me?" She gave me a pitying look. "David has a type and a pattern. Married women. The thrill of taking something that belongs to someone else. I started tracking his latest conquest when I noticed him at the residences too often. Saw you there a few weeks ago looking lost. Did the math." "I'm not interested in his personal life," I said, though my chest tightened at her casual confirmation of the affair. "I'm looking into his business dealings with Councilman Wilson." Jessica smiled thinly. "Those two things aren't separate in David's world. Everything is connected." She slid the folder across the table. "Wilson's daughter didn't get a scholarship. Harmon Development Group created a shell company that hired her as a consultant, pays her $5,000 a month for doing absolutely nothing." I opened the folder to find bank statements, corporate filings, and emails, printed, highlighted, annotated. "Why are you giving me this, I asked, stunned by the thoroughness of her documentation. "Because the bastard left me for another married woman 5 years ago, then used his political connections to screw me in the divorce." Her eyes hardened. "I've been building this file for years, but I can't use it myself. He's got too much on me. But you're squeaky clean, aren't you, Tom?" I flinched at hearing my name. "How do you—" "Like I said, I did my homework." She stood up. "There's enough in that folder to trigger a serious investigation. The rest is up to you." She paused, studying my face. "For what it's worth, they never last. The affairs. He'll drop your wife the moment some new challenge comes along, but by then she'll have lost everything, including you, I'm guessing." After she left, I sat there for nearly an hour, examining the contents of the folder. This was no longer about getting back at the man who'd slept with my wife. This was bigger. Corruption, bribery, abuse of public trust. If I sent these documents to the Ethics Commission, to the press, to the district attorney's office, I would be destroying not just David Harmon's relationship with Laura, but his entire business, his reputation, possibly his freedom. The realization should have given me pause. Instead, I felt a cold clarity I hadn't experienced since this nightmare began. Back at home, I scanned every document, organized the digital files, and composed 3 separate emails, one to the Ethics Commission, one to the district attorney, and one to the newspaper's investigative team. I included everything except any mention of the affair or my personal connection to Harmon. This wasn't about my broken marriage. This was about justice. My finger hovered over the send button. I sent the emails. Then I waited. 1 day, 2 days, 3. The silence was excruciating. Had Jessica's information been credible? Had my messages been dismissed as crackpot conspiracy theories? I checked news sites and local blogs obsessively, looking for any hint that the wheels of justice were turning. On the 4th day, Laura called again. "I'm coming home tomorrow," she said, not asking this time. "We need to talk face to face." "Fine," I replied, my attention split between her words and the news alert that had just popped up on my computer. Ethics Commission launches investigation into Councilman Wilson's relationship with local developer. It had begun. By the time Laura arrived the next day, the story had exploded. The morning news led with breaking search warrants executed at Harmon Development Group offices. Social media was buzzing with speculation. The district attorney had made a statement about taking public corruption seriously. Laura looked awful, pale, with dark circles under her eyes. She'd lost weight. "What's going on, Tom?" she asked as soon as she stepped through the door. "David's been acting strange, paranoid. He barely answers my calls, and when he does, he's distracted. Something about a business emergency." "I wouldn't know," I said, gesturing toward the living room, "but it sounds serious." She followed me, then stopped dead when she saw the TV. The local news was running footage of David Harmon being escorted from his office building, not in handcuffs, but clearly under law enforcement supervision. The ticker at the bottom read, "Developer David Harmon questioned in bribery investigation." "Oh my God," Laura whispered, sinking onto the couch. "What did you do?" The accusation caught me off guard. "What makes you think I had anything to do with this?" "Because you've been working on something important," she said, making air quotes. "Because this started right after you found out about us. Because I know you, Tom." Did she? Did she really know me? The man she'd married wouldn't have sent those emails, wouldn't have deliberately destroyed someone's life and career, no matter the justification. But I wasn't that man anymore. "David Harmon bribed a city councilman to get zoning approval for his development project," I said, keeping my voice level. "That's illegal. If he's in trouble, it's because of his own actions." "You did this to get back at him," she said, her voice rising. "To get back at me." "No, Laura, I did this because it was the right thing to do." The lie tasted strange on my tongue. Not completely false, but certainly not the whole truth. Corrupt people shouldn't be allowed to profit from their corruption. "You're not a crusader for justice, Tom. You fix accounting software for a living." Her dismissal stung more than it should have. "And you're not a runner, yet here we are." Laura's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, her face crumpling. "It's David. He wants to meet. Says he thinks he knows who's behind the investigation." A cold sweat broke out across my back. "What are you going to tell him?" She looked at me for a long moment, her expression unreadable. "I don't know yet." The next few hours passed in tense silence. Laura stayed, despite my half-hearted suggestion that she might be more comfortable at her sister's. She watched the news coverage with growing horror as more details emerged, emails between Harmon and Wilson discussing arrangements, the shell company payments to Wilson's daughter, a vacation property purchased at far below market value. The case against them looked airtight. "I need to tell you something," Laura finally said as evening fell. "David asked me about you, specifically, if you might be behind this." My stomach lurched. "What did you say?" "I told him you weren't the type, that revenge wasn't your style." She laughed bitterly. "I guess I was wrong about that, too." "You don't know what you're talking about," I muttered, though the denial felt hollow even to my own ears. "Don't I? You found out I was having an affair, and 2 weeks later, the man I was seeing is being investigated for corruption? That's one hell of a coincidence, Tom." "Maybe he shouldn't have been corrupt," I shot back. Laura shook her head slowly. "You know what's ironic? This is the most passion, the most drive I've seen from you in years. Not to save our marriage, not to win me back, but to destroy someone." Her words hit like a physical blow. Was that true? Had I put more energy into revenge than into our relationship? The question gnawed at me. My phone rang, an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Hello, Tom?" A man's voice, smooth and confident despite a slight edge of tension. "David Harmon here. I think it's time we talked." A chill ran through me. "How did you get this number?" "From your wife's phone, of course." The casual way he said it, claiming ownership of something of Laura's, made my blood boil. "Look, I know what you did. My ex-wife called to gloat about her new friend who was so interested in my business dealings." Laura was watching me intently. She couldn't hear his side of the conversation, but my expression must have given something away. I didn't do anything you didn't deserve, I said carefully. He laughed. Fair enough. But here's what you don't understand. People like me always land on their feet. This investigation, I've got 3 former district attorneys on retainer and enough dirt on half the city council to ensure mutual destruction if they push too hard. I'll be fine. Then why call me? I asked. Because I wanted you to know that when the dust settles, and it will, I'll still be in your wife's bed. And now she knows exactly what kind of man you really are. The call ended. I stood there, phone in hand, feeling hollow. That was him, wasn't it? Laura asked quietly. What did he say? I couldn't bring myself to repeat his words. Instead, I asked the question that had been burning inside me for weeks. Do you love him? Her hesitation said everything. I thought I did, she finally answered. Now, I don't know what to think about either of you. She gathered her purse and keys. I'm going back to my sister's. When you decide whether you want to be the man who fixes things or the man who destroys them, let me know. The door closed behind her with a quiet click that somehow felt more final than any slam. Harmon was right about one thing. People like him often did land on their feet. The investigation stalled after key witnesses suddenly became uncooperative. Councilman Wilson resigned for health reasons, but faced no charges. The newspaper lost interest as newer scandals emerged. Only Harmon's ex-wife continued to push, filing complaints and speaking to anyone who would listen, but her voice alone wasn't enough. I returned to work, offering no explanation for my extended absence beyond personal matters. My colleagues gave me space, misinterpreting my quiet determination for grief. In a way, they weren't wrong. 3 weeks after Laura walked out, my lawyer called. She's filed for divorce, he said, citing irreconcilable differences. No mention of her affair, I asked. Number, and no mention of your involvement in recent events. A mutual silence, then, a shared agreement to bury the uglier truths of our failed marriage. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt nothing at all. That night, I opened my laptop one last time, not to search for evidence or dig up dirt, but to write an email to the one person who deserved to know the full story. Dear Jessica, I typed. I failed to bring him down. I'm sorry. Her reply came within minutes. Don't apologize. You did more than most, but this isn't over. The next morning, I met her at the same cafe. She looked more energized than before, almost vibrant with purpose. I've been thinking about what went wrong, she said without preamble. We need more than documents. We need someone on the inside to testify. Wilson's daughter, I suggested. Jessica shook her head. Too loyal to her father, but I have another idea. She slid a business card across the table. Meet Andrea Chen, David's former CFO. She was forced out last year after questioning some financial discrepancies. She's been waiting for the right opportunity to return the favor. I stared at the card. Why are you telling me this? Because you're invested now, because you need this as much as I do. She wasn't wrong. The question was, what kind of man did that make me? Andrea Chen was nothing like I expected. No bitter ex-employee with an axe to grind, but a composed professional with meticulous records and a strong ethical compass. I didn't leave willingly, she explained as we sat in her downtown office. I was terminated after flagging irregular payments through a series of offshore accounts, payments that coincided with city contract approvals. Why didn't you go to the authorities? I asked. I tried, but without access to the complete records, my evidence was circumstantial, and Harmon's legal team made it clear that breaking my NDA would result in being blacklisted from the industry entirely. She shrugged. I have 3 kids in college. With Andrea's guidance, we built a stronger case, not just about Wilson, but about systemic corruption reaching into multiple city departments. This wasn't about my personal vendetta anymore. It was about something that actually mattered. Meanwhile, the divorce proceeded smoothly. Laura and I communicated only through lawyers. I learned she'd moved into her own apartment. No mention of David Harmon in any of our exchanges, though I occasionally spotted his name in business sections of the newspaper, usually announcing new projects or acquisitions. His world seemed untouched by the brief investigation. One evening, as I was reviewing documents with Jessica and Andrea, my phone lit up with Laura's name. My finger hovered over the decline button. "You should take it," Jessica said, surprising me. "You'll never move forward if you don't find closure." I stepped outside to answer. "Hello?" "Tom." Laura's voice sounded different, smaller somehow. "I just wanted you to know that I'm not seeing David anymore." I closed my eyes. Is that supposed to mean something to me? "No," she said after a pause. "I guess not. I just thought you should know." "Why did you end it?" I couldn't help asking. "I didn't. He did. Once the investigation died down, he lost interest, said it was too complicated. The bitter satisfaction I'd expected to feel never materialized. Instead, there was only a hollow sadness for what we'd both become. "I'm sorry," I said, and meant it. Not for what I'd done, but for what had happened to us both. 6 months after that phone call, the case against Harmon Development Group broke wide open. Andrea's testimony, combined with new evidence from a whistleblower inside the city planning department, was too substantial to ignore or suppress. Federal authorities took over the investigation, and suddenly, David Harmon's smooth confidence was replaced by visible panic at press conferences. I watched it unfold from a distance. I'd provided my evidence to Andrea early on, but stepped back from active involvement. This wasn't my fight anymore. It had grown beyond my personal pain into something legitimate and important. Jessica kept me updated, though, sending brief messages about each new development with the same signature. Justice moves slowly, but it moves. The divorce finalized quietly. The house sold quickly. Laura and I split the proceeds without argument. The last time I saw her was at the signing, where she looked both older and somehow more like the woman I'd married than the stranger she'd become. "I heard about Harmon," she said, as we walked to the parking lot. "They're saying he could face prison time." "Yes? Did you—" She left the question hanging. "I helped get things started," I admitted. "Others took it from there." She nodded slowly. "I never understood why you chose revenge over trying to save our marriage." "It wasn't about revenge, not in the end." I searched for the right words. "It was about finding something I could control when everything else was falling apart, something that mattered." "And did it help? Do you feel better now?" I considered the question carefully. Not better, different. I learned things about myself, some good, some not so good. I'm still figuring out who I am without you." "Me too," she said softly. We reached her car first. An awkward moment passed as we both realized this was truly the end. 25 years reduced to a handshake in a parking lot. "Take care of yourself, Tom," she said finally. "You too, Laura." I watched her drive away, then checked my phone. A new message from Jessica. "Indictment's coming tomorrow. You should be there." For the first time in months, I smiled, not from satisfaction at Harmon's downfall, but at the realization that I'd found my way to something that felt like purpose, something beyond the betrayal that had almost consumed me. I texted back a single word, "Ready."